tuned into the show. Just in case you missed the last show, here's a recap for you. Here's a summary of what you've come to understand during this episode. You've seen the heartbreaking truth behind why
should in fact know this, but they don't. Let's say that your body and your genetics is the computer. That's the hardware. People can understand this. The epigenetics is the software. The software runs the hardware. We know that from computers. We don't seem to understand that with the human body. So what we need to do is not dwell upon the genetics, but the epigenetics. In other words, what works that computer? If the software is working, generally the hardware is working.
So our last question. You wrote a book called What Angelina Should Have Known and Didn't Know. So what should she have known?
I feel very sorry for her because she has removed healthy breast. Can you imagine, Ty? You remove your manhood, your healthy manhood, because of fear. It's crazy. But she thought it's the only way for prevention. But there's another way for prevention, because she should have known that our genes do not control life. You can activate genes and deactivate. And if we deactivate our genes with our healthy lifestyle, we do not get cancer. That's what she should have known.
It's not so much that we're born with this gene that's going to give us breast cancer. It's that our epigenetic, our environmental influences, the food we eat, the exercise we do or don't do, the toxic exposure rate, turn those genes on or off. So you don't have to worry about these inherited genes that may cause you to do a prophylactic double mastectomy. That's just insanity from my perspective, and it's an irrational fear. If you appreciate and fully understand the amazing regenerative capacity our body has, if it's given the proper tools.
One of the major problems that we have in terms of our old understanding of genetics is that people believe if they were born, say, as a woman with a BRCA gene that might increase their risk of breast cancer, they have not been told, and certainly wouldn't expect to hear from their doctor, that the way they live their life will alter the expression of those genes and their risk of cancer.
The BRCA gene scare, it really was quite a Hollywood hype, last year. And I'm not judging her. I mean, she saw her mother die a very horrible death. But there was a lot of misinformation. The BRCA genes are actually cancer protective genes. They help to repair DNA damage. And so the BRCA gene, if it mutates, then it can cause a problem possibly. But what causes it to mutate? Look at the foods, look at the radiation. So BRCA genes are tumor suppressor protective genes.
So do you inherit breast cancer? Or breast cancer genes that are, is it inherited? Is it genetic?
That's the big thing. Well, my mother had breast cancer, so I'm probably going to have breast cancer. But we now know through the study of epigenetics, which is the science of looking at gene expression, and nutrigenomics, which is the study of food, we know that we can change our gene expression by what we eat, how we sleep or don't sleep, how we manage or don't manage our stress, the foods that we eat. So something as simple as curcumin can help to really turn on the cancer protective genes and change those gene expressions.
Wow, I bet you've never heard that before, that the BRCA gene can actually protect you from breast cancer. It does not necessarily cause breast cancer. Now, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Think Pink, Run for the Cure. You see all of these different campaigns that are aimed at bringing awareness to breast cancer, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We want to bring awareness to cancer as well. However, let's look at the history of Breast Cancer Awareness Month through the eyes of Erin Elizabeth.
Yeah, so it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it's interesting how the whole story started with the pink ribbon that you were mentioning. It used to be a peach ribbon, and it was a woman named Charlotte Haley who had started that grassroots movement. And her whole objective was to get the word out that so little money was spent on prevention, first of all, not just research, but with prevention. And that's still the case today. And even with research, not much of the money that they'll raise during the month of October is really even spent in research because so much overhead. So yeah, it's a real shame. But what most people don't know is back in '92, this little old lady just started a grassroots movement with her peach ribbons, which she was giving out to people. She'd give out 5 at a time with a little note, and it really took off, where she wanted people to be aware, not so much of just breast cancer itself, but of preventing breast cancer in the first place. And then Estee Lauder and Self magazine came along, and they wanted to use her ribbon. And I think they were shocked when she said, no, I'm not going to support these corporations turning my grassroots movement into this thing that really became more about making money. So, and today, even when I was doing some research on it, and I'll try to find her name in pink ribbons, you keep getting these Estee Lauder ads selling their expensive, now they've got, I don't know if they're diamond encrusted, ribbons you can buy. It really seems like it's been exploited. It's ironic that you have Susan G. Komen or Estee Lauder or Kentucky Fried Chicken, Susan G. Komen doing joint ventures with them with the pink ribbon, which it really boils down to that these corporations that are not really healthy are, it's a bit hypocritical that they're trying to be out there selling the pink ribbon and saying they're all about curing breast cancer.
We go around and celebrate wearing pink socks and pink ribbons and buying pink lemonade on an airline to contribute to cancer. It sure does. It's ridiculous. I coach youth sports. I won't wear pink. I won't put pink on. I don't believe in that. Why? Because the pharmaceutical intervention, conventional methods are not saving lives.
So now we're going to end the war on cancer. So we're going to get everybody involved. We're going to get them to run for it. We're going to get them to jump for it. We're going to get them to pray for it. We're going to get them to beg for it. So now everybody, you can't go anywhere without giving money I can't buy groceries without somebody wanting money from me.
With all the money that we're pouring into Relay for Life, the Komen, really hasn't helped change things for the patients.
And so you saw that firsthand as an
I
oncology
did.
nurse for 17 years.
I did.
It's not on the camera, but you got some really neon pink tennis shoes on. But what about the pink movement, right? The breast cancer pink movement. What's your take on the October Get Your Mammograms?
Well, its focus is on breast cancer awareness instead of breast health awareness, and the pink movement has really caused so much fear and so much misinformation when it comes to breast cancer in women. And there's so many myths involving breast cancer.
Dr. V just mentioned breast cancer myths. During Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we always hear early detection is your best protection. And everyone knows that for breast cancer, mammograms are the best way to early detect. Or is this a myth?
There's been at least 2 studies, very large, that have come out on limitations of mammography. One of them was a Canadian study, I believe it was 20 or 25 years that they've watched in the past, that found no benefit. Also the Lancet, which is a large British journal, equivalent to our Journal of American Medical Association, or JAMA, came out and said that there's really no benefit at all to doing, and possibly some harm. The harm being it is ionizing radiation, which we know isn't the best for us.
Right.
And also, again, with the pancake smasher, if you do have a cancer and you smash that wall that the body's put around it, are you spreading the disease that way?
Right.
I don't know, but I don't want to find out.
Well, yeah, and that's the Lancet, right? That's pretty reputable.
Yeah, it's pretty reputable. And also the BMJ, the British Medical Journal, I believe, did a write-up as well. So that's 2 or 3 very reputable, internationally published.
Early detection just means early death, because the earlier they find it, the earlier they start cutting you, the earlier they start treating you with chemotherapy and radiation, and the earlier you die. Breast cancer grows 7 to 12 years to a size in the breast that you can even diagnose it. So there is no rush. They find breast cancer, you have to go and get surgery tomorrow morning.
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, because they don't want you to get basically the time to get educated and educate yourself. So let's talk about this early detection. Imagine your lymph system, you have 4 times more lymph liquid than blood. So your lymph system, your lymph nodes are there to neutralize poison. It's like when you have a tonsillitis, they are the big lymph nodes, and then they're just working hard. it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, showing, oh, the tonsils caught all these poisons, and basically they're just diluting it and neutralizing it and then getting rid of it. So when you have that, Ty, and imagine like a pimple that's ready to burst. Now the lymph node in the breast might be working hard and being inflamed. It looks like a pimple is getting to burst, ready to burst. So now they put 50 pounds of pressure on it.
That makes sure it bursts.
That makes sure it bursts.
We, as a medical society, are giving women breast cancer with our demanding that they get mammograms. Mammograms cause breast cancer, period. So mammograms are not healthy for women. Women should not be getting routine mammograms. That's crystal clear, published in the peer-reviewed literature. And yet today, if a woman went to her gynecologist or family doc, she would have this shoved down her throat, extreme coercion to go get this mammogram that's causing breast cancer.
Wow, what a telling quote from Dr. Ben Johnson. Mammograms are actually causing cancer. Now, in that respect, I guess they're sort of similar to chemotherapy, because chemotherapy actually causes cancer. In last night's episode, we learned the story about Dr. Farid Fatah that was diagnosing people with cancer that didn't even have cancer and then prescribing chemotherapy. I guess you could say he was overdiagnosing them. What about mammograms? Is mammography prone to diagnose women with breast cancer that don't even have breast cancer? Are we being told the whole truth about this issue?
There's been a manipulation of the science, and there's been a very dangerous thing called overdiagnosis that has really afflicted millions of women over the past 30 years, especially for breast cancer. Because what they've done is that they convinced women that if they were to basically subscribe to an X-ray mammography screening, even though they have no symptoms, that ultimately that would help them in the long run. They'd have a lower risk of cancer because they'd find it early.
Early detection is your best protection.
Exactly. They even equated this meme with prevention, when in fact you're exposing your breast to a type of radiation that is actually known to have a higher risk of causing cancer in the breast, especially if you have the BRCA1 and 2 gene mutations that everyone is so concerned about, because they make it harder for you to to protect yourself from radiation-induced damage. So overdiagnosis, according to a recent study done in the New England Journal of Medicine, over the past 30 years in the United States resulted in 1.3 million women being diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer that technically never had any type of cancer that would have caused harm. This is called ductal carcinoma in situ, or stage 0 cancer, which they equated with actual cancer, which now we know is not. And so what that basically meant is that they would give them the standard mastectomy or lumpectomy with radiation, with chemotherapy, things like tamoxifen, and then follow up hormone suppressive therapies like Arimidex. So basically what we're dealing with here is a kind of a medical holocaust of sorts, because those women now had to deal with being diagnosed with a cancer they didn't have, being treated for it, having the stigma and all the psycho-spiritual emotional stress that's caused by that. And then statistically, the industry told them that they saved their lives, when in fact quite the opposite had happened. So they identify with the aggressor like a Stockholm syndrome, and millions of people march in these breast cancer awareness marches, not realizing that it's funded by the very corporations that make money off the drugs used to treat breast cancer. We're talking about AstraZeneca, which actually is a derivative of Imperial Chemical Industries, who started Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the 80s and has a patent, or had the patent, for tamoxifen and Arimidex. So it's a vicious circle of brainwashing, and it's used to cover up really what has cost the lives, I think, of hundreds of thousands of women ultimately.
You know, my perception was not quite there.
That's
when
part
I was
of the modified
diagnosed
Myers.
the first and second time. But the third time, when I was told that I had about a year to live if I was unwilling to do the chemo, which I had been all along, and that the cancer would metastasize, and maybe within a year there would be no hope for me, something that stirred something very deep inside of me, and I began to awaken. And it was not an easy journey. I still had my fears. I still had days where I felt like maybe it was easier to die than it was to live. I went through all of that, but all along, underneath all that, was this guidance that I had never opened up to before, but I was beginning to follow. And that guidance, just step by step, day by day, it led me, and it saved my life.
But they said it was late stage
Yes.
and supposedly terminal. You had less than a year to live.
Yes, they thought they could maybe give me 5 years. That was a maybe. But without it, they thought within a year they were pretty sure it would metastasize and there would be nothing they could do. I was learning to trust that information and trust my body. And my body was giving me signals, because when I asked about chemotherapy, Ty, I would get this sort of real deep clenching in my gut, sometimes almost painful. And then when I would say something like, because I didn't know what to do, I had no idea there was an alternative out there of any kind. I would say something like, if there was something out there better for me, would that be helpful? And that clenching would just completely release. And so I knew, even though I didn't know where to go and what to do, I knew I couldn't walk the path they were asking me.
You knew there must be a better way.
I did.
Wow, that's an encouraging story from Brenda Michaels, who healed her breast cancer naturally. And it's a stark contrast to a story that I saw recently on HBO. It was a documentary special on cancer. And a lady had been diagnosed with cancer in her left breast, and she had had it surgically removed. And you see her later in the show weeping. She's got a scar on her breast, and she says she looks like Frankenstein. And then she says, and now we're going to start radiation next week. I was so saddened for her, because the lady did not know that she had options. She did not have the knowledge that you are gaining through watching the show. Much like Brenda Michaels, Dr. Veronique Desaulniers was aware of the options she had. Dr. Veronique was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she treated it and beat it.
You know, as a woman, it was so shocking for me, because I was the one that was helping my patients get well and reversing all these various diseases in my practice. And so when I discovered that I had breast cancer, it was really a blow to my ego, for one, and it was also a big wake-up call for me. You know, I thought I had the world by the tail, and I realized that obviously if my body allowed the cancer to grow, there was something that I was missing. And so I had to really look at my life. I had to look how I was managing my stress. I had to look at, putting pieces of the puzzle together that obviously I'd missed. So it really led me down a path of, soul searching and really digging deep. There were a lot of, tearful days, a lot of tearful nights. But like I tell my clients today, you have to transform the whole person. It's not just the physical lump or bump, but you have to heal the whole body. And that means heart, soul, mind, spirit, everything. Because if you keep doing the things you've always done, you're going to continue to get the same results. Why? Why and how? So if that could happen to somebody like me, who was, doing so many things that were right, then how much more so could other women be vulnerable to this, dis-ease in their body, and just helping them to understand that it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not, cancer is not the disease itself. It's just the tip of the iceberg that shows you that there's so many underlying things, because you have to be sick in order to develop cancer. You don't get cancer, then you're sick. Your body's already sick and it's compromised. Your immune system's weak. You're toxic. You're stressed out. And that's how cancer develops. And, so it's displacing that myth and that fear that cancer is just something that gets you. It's something that develops over a period of time. And you're not a victim of it. You have a lot of control over it. So one of the reasons that I'm doing the work that I'm doing is because there's so much information out there. And where does one person start? Because, do I detox first? Do I do this? Do I do that? What herbs do I take? So I developed a program. It's a 7-step program called the 7 Essentials. And it's so simple that anybody can apply it. So the first one is essential number 1. Let food be your medicine. We know that food has a huge impact on our genetic expression. We know that it can, literally turn on specific cancer protective genes. We know that through the science of epigenetics and nutrigenomics. Number 2 is to detox, reduce your toxic exposure. We live in a toxic world. We can't deny that, but there are things that you can do specifically to help support the detoxification pathways in your body and to prevent all the toxins from entering into your body. Essential number 3 is to balance your energy. we're energetic beings. And so what can you do to keep that electricity and that energy flowing properly? Chiropractic care, acupuncture, exercise, proper sleep, making sure that your hormones are balanced, because hormones are very key in so many hormone-driven cancers. Essential number 4 is to heal your emotional wounds. Learn to nurture yourself and to love yourself, to forgive yourself and others. Manage your stress better. Let go of the past, because those things, if you keep stuffing those emotions inside, are going to grow a tumor. You either grow your life or you grow a tumor. So you have to change that emotional component. Essential number 5 is to look at biological dentistry, because your teeth have a huge impact on your health. Your teeth are connected to your organs through your meridian system. What you have in your teeth affects your health, because if you have toxic amalgams in there, it's causing toxicity in the body. And then we look at essential number 6, which is, there are specific herbs and supplements and vitamins that can really reduce your toxic load, that can help heal the cancer, actually kill cancer cells, and boost your immune system. Okay, and lastly is essential number 7, in really practicing true prevention. Traditional medicine, unfortunately, does not really teach prevention and does not know about prevention. There are many, many ways and different technologies that can detect cancer when it's at the size of a pinhead, instead of waiting until it's the size of a lump or a bump that you can detect on an X-ray or on a mammogram. Thermography, for example, can read the physiological changes that are going on in the body. There are specific blood tests, like the Cancer Profile, which measures the HCG hormones, the PHI, which is a malignancy hormone, TK1 enzyme, the Oncoblot test, which can also determine, cancer when it's just the size of a pinhead in the body. That's true prevention. And so if you can stay on top of your health by monitoring and not just guessing about your health, but making sure that you're moving in the right direction, there's no reason to fear cancer.
I agree 100% with Dr. V. There is no reason to fear cancer. Now, she just shared with us what she calls her 7 essentials.